This is what I've been waiting for. A study of 8,000 vegetarians followed for 18 years. Ooh. I didn't wait to go back to my seat, didn't wait to go home. I just stood there in the newly received journal section. This was just published last year, 2002, and read it. I stood there and my jaw dropped. Stunned into silence, shocked at what I saw. They reported no difference between the mortality rates of meat eaters compared to the mortality rates of vegetarians. No difference. But wait a second, it doesn't make any sense. What are the top 3 killers in the U.S.? Heart disease, cancer, stroke. How could we be dying at the same rate as meat eaters? It doesn't make any sense. Well, there are 3 findings I'd like to investigate with everyone today, and that's finding number 1. Why do meat eaters seem to live just as long as vegetarians? And not only did vegetarians not seem to live longer, they had basically the same cancer death rates too, the same number of colon cancer deaths, the same fatal stroke rate, and this is what I've been worried about, the same rates of fatal heart disease. They found no difference in the risk of dying from a heart attack between those that ate meat and those that didn't eat meat. What are you saying? Doesn't that go against everything we know, though? Right? What about our cholesterol? What's counteracting all of our natural potential as vegetarians? Right? Now, we don't have more heart disease than meat eaters, but certainly more than we should. Right? So I went down the list of mortality rates for all the other diseases. Same mortality rates from stroke, heart disease, same difference, same. Okay, well, at least out of the list of the top dozen or so things people die from, there were at least 2 classes of diseases for which the mortality rates were significantly different between vegetarians and meat eaters. Unfortunately, they were not in our favor. Some of the data suggested that vegetarians seem to have a 50% greater risk of dying from breast cancer, for example. But that was explained away by the fact that vegetarians tend to have less children, which is a well-known risk factor for breast cancer. So vegetarianism probably has nothing to do with breast cancer mortality. I just want to make that clear. But the second finding is less easy to explain away. They found that vegetarians had over twice the risk of dying from degenerative brain diseases, like Alzheimer's disease. What? First of all, the fact that the only 2 differences were more vegetarian deaths, that's upsetting in itself. But what's this about vegetarians having twice the risk of dying from mental and neurological disease? I mean, when I first saw this, I said, these have just got to be some kind of weird random flukes, right? Because it doesn't make any sense. Well, these are the latest published results. But, it actually takes like a year to go to publication. So this data is like years old by now. Every 5 years, all the experts on vegetarian nutrition get together and hold an international congress on vegetarian nutrition. And the last one was, just last year, April 2002. Hey. So is there anything new under the vegetarian sun? Yes, indeed. Preliminary results from a study released twice the size, 17,000 vegetarians. This so-called EPIC study out of Europe started in 1993, so we had been waiting almost 10 years for results to start trickling out. Well, last year, they trickled. Ready for the results? Once again, vegetarians had the same mortality rates as meat eaters, confirming the other study. Okay, but what about this? What about the brain disease thing? That has just got to be some kind of weird fluke. Sadly, no. There was only one significant difference this time between the mortality rates of vegetarians and meat eaters, and that was that vegetarians had a 50% greater risk of dying from brain disorders. Now, right now, all the smug vegans in the room are thinking, I know what's going on, right? Isn't milk just liquid meat? All that saturated fat and cholesterol, and indeed, dairy is the #1 source of saturated fat in the American diet. Right? And aren't eggs like little cholesterol bombs? No wonder they're not doing so hot, right? They're dragging down the average, right? Separate out the vegans, and then you'll see a little longevity, baby, you know? Well, unfortunately, neither of these two studies separated out the vegans. All right, so where can we turn? Well, this is the latest research, both published and unpublished. What about the best? Well, you know, the best research we have today is probably this study, published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, called Mortality in Vegetarians and Non-Vegetarians. And what these 12 researchers did was took all the biggest and best studies to date and kind of pooled all the data together. So they took a decade of mortality data from 28,000 vegetarians from Germany, the UK, and California, and found no survival advantage for vegetarians. What about vegans, though? We don't eat all that cheesy crap, and we have even lower cholesterol levels, right? Vegans didn't live any longer either. Same mortality rates as meat eaters. Wow, there must be something really working against vegans if we can die those kind of heart disease rates with such low cholesterol levels. Right? Now, this isn't the end-all, be-all. Though it had 28,000 vegetarians, it only had a few hundred vegans. This new EPIC study out of Europe has thousands of vegans who will soon become the best study on vegans in human history. Unfortunately, having seen some of the preliminary data and spoken to the principal investigators over there, there's no reason to suspect that the results will come out any different than what we see right here. And in fact, just last month, the results from the famous German Heidelberg study were released. 2,000 people followed for 21 years, and the vegetarians lived longer than the vegans. And those who ate meat on occasion outlasted them all. All right, before I go about exploring these findings, I would just like to throw up a third finding I'd like to investigate today, and throw up is right. Osteoporosis has reached epidemic levels in this country. 10 million Americans, particularly women, suffer from this disease. Now, if you compare the bone mineral density of vegetarians to meat eaters, it's about the same. Now, in some studies, the bone mineral density of vegans has not been as good, but you know, bone mineral density is only one indicator of bone health. What you also want to know is if someone's actually more likely to break something. So, hip fracture rate has been considered kind of like the gold standard in terms of an indicator for bone health. But since there's never been any studies on hip fracture rates in vegetarians, I don't think we can conclusively say much about vegetarian bone health. Again, we could estimate, right, based on bone mineral density, we're probably doing pretty good. But again, we didn't have any studies on hip fracture rates in vegetarians until now. Presented for the first time to the Congress last year in a study of thousands of California Seventh-day Adventists, vegetarians had over twice the hip fracture rate as meat eaters. So this is the third finding I'd like to investigate with everyone today. Let's start with this, the first finding about longevity, right? Now, this isn't to say we couldn't necessarily live longer, right? Remember our cholesterol levels, our blood pressure and all that. We have a tremendous potential for decreasing heart disease risk, but something is getting in our way. What is it about vegetarian and vegan diets that's increasing our risk of dying so much that it's counteracting kind of all of our natural benefits? Right? What is it? And just as importantly, can we change it? And the good news is, about time for some good news, and the good news is that yes, we think we know exactly what's going on, and yes, with but a few simple changes, not only will we reclaim all of our natural vegetarian advantages, but we may surpass our highest expectations.